In a valley cradled by green, sleeping hills, there was a river that was more alive than any other. It was not just water flowing to the sea. It was the valley's heartbeat. Its currents sang a happy, bubbling song as they danced over colorful pebbles. Its deep pools were as clear as glass, home to families of silver-finned fish, and its banks were lush and green, dotted with cheerful wildflowers that would dip their heads to drink. This river was the best friend of a young boy named Finn. Finn knew the river's every mood. He knew the quiet, thoughtful spots where the water was deep and slow, and the playful, laughing rapids where it tumbled and splashed. He would spend his days walking its banks, his bare feet cool in the soft mud. He would talk to the river, telling it his secrets, and he felt that the river listened. Its constant, gentle song, a comforting reply. He loved the little otters that made slippery slides on the muddy banks, and the brilliant blue kingfishers that would dart like jewels over the water's surface. To Finn, the river was not just a place. It was a living, breathing friend, a world of endless wonder and happy, gurgling music. One morning, Finn ran down to his favorite spot by the river, but he stopped in his tracks, a feeling of cold dread washing over him. The river's happy, bubbling song was gone. It had been replaced by a low, sick, and sluggish gurgle. He looked at the water, and his heart sank. The crystal-clear current he loved was now a murky, brownish gray, and a strange, oily shimmer coated its surface. The cheerful, colorful pebbles at the bottom were hidden under a layer of sad, brown silt. A terrible, sour smell, like old, forgotten things, hung in the air. The wildflowers along the bank, which were usually so bright and proud, were drooping and wilted. Their petals turned a sad, sickly brown where the murky water had touched them. The birds were silent, and the playful otters were nowhere to be seen. The whole world seemed to be holding its breath, grieving for the sickness that had come upon the river. Finn knelt and dipped his hand in the water. It felt heavy and left a slimy, unpleasant film on his skin. This was not the friend he knew. This was a sad, tired stranger. The river was sick, and its sickness was spreading, poisoning the beautiful valley that Finn loved so much. Finn knew he couldn't just stand by and watch his friend suffer. The sickness was flowing downstream, which meant the source of the problem must be far upriver, high in the mountains where the river was born. A brave and unwavering resolve filled his small heart. He would go on a journey. He would follow the river to its source and find out what was making it so sick. He ran back to his home and packed a small, sturdy knapsack. He packed a loaf of bread, a coil of rope, and a clean bottle to collect a water sample. He told his mother that he was going camping for a few days, a small lie to keep her from worrying. With a final, sad look at the sick, silent river flowing past his home, he turned and began the long, arduous journey upstream. He walked with a heavy heart, but also with a fierce determination. He was not an adventurer seeking treasure or a hero seeking glory. He was just a boy, on a mission to save his best friend. He would follow the trail of the river's sickness, no matter how far or how difficult the path, and he would not rest until the water ran clear and happy once again. The journey upstream was a sad one. The further Finn walked, the more he saw how deeply the river's sickness had wounded the land. He passed by the great, smooth rock that the otters had used as a slide for generations. It was now dry and caked with smelly, brown mud. The happy, playful otters were gone. He passed the tall, dead willow tree where the brilliant blue kingfishers always nested. The nest was empty, the branches bare and silent. The once beautiful music of the valley had been replaced by a heavy, sorrowful quiet. Every step took him further into a world of decay. The water in the river grew darker and thicker, the smell more pungent. The trees along the bank were losing their leaves, their bark peeling and sick. It was as if he were walking through a world that was slowly dying. Finn's heart ached with every sad sight, but he did not turn back. The sadness did not weaken him. It fueled his resolve. He knew that he was getting closer to the source of the poison. He walked on, his kind face set in a grim, determined line, his eyes scanning the water, searching for the reason for all this pain. After 2 long days of walking, Finn reached the high, hidden part of the mountains where the river was born. He climbed over a final ridge of rocks and found himself in a place of ancient, sacred beauty, now tainted by a great sorrow. It was a large, circular pool of water, fed by a spring deep within the earth, and surrounded by a circle of weeping willow trees. This was the river's source. But the water in the pool was almost black, thick with a foul-smelling sludge, and the beautiful willow trees were dying, their branches bare and their leaves a sickly yellow-brown. And in the center of this poisoned pool, he saw it, the source of the sickness. It was an immense, ancient turtle, a creature so large that its back was the size of a small cottage. Its great shell was a living landscape of river stones and moss, but it was now covered in a thick, dark grime. This was Koa, the river guardian, the ancient spirit whose life force was the river's own, and he was in terrible trouble. A great, tangled mess of old, human-made things, rotting ropes, torn fishing nets, and large, rusty pieces of metal was wrapped around his body, trapping him and poisoning the water at its very source. Finn stared in horror, his heart breaking for the magnificent, ancient creature. Koa, the river guardian, was trapped a prisoner in his own home. The rusty chains and old, torn nets were wrapped so tightly around his great, stony legs and his long, wrinkled neck that he could barely move. A large, jagged piece of metal was wedged cruelly against his shell, right next to a beautiful, large, jade green stone that was embedded in his back. The green stone, which Finn knew must be the turtle's heart, was dim and covered in the same oily grime as the rest of the pool. It pulsed with a very slow, very weak, and very faint light, a heartbeat that was on the verge of stopping. The guardian was not just sick, he was dying, and his slow death was poisoning the entire river that flowed from him. As Finn watched, Koa slowly, painfully, lifted his great head and opened his eyes. They were the color of warm, golden amber, but they were clouded with an ancient, unbearable pain and a deep, profound weariness. He looked at Finn, not with anger, but with a silent, desperate plea for help. In that moment, Finn's fear vanished completely, replaced by a surge of fierce, protective compassion. He would not let this beautiful, ancient creature die. Finn did not hesitate. "Don't move," he called out, his voice clear and steady. "I'm going to help you." He took off his heavy backpack and his boots, and without a second thought for the cold, foul water, he waded into the poisoned pool. The sludge was thick and cold, and the smell was terrible. But he pushed through it, his eyes fixed on the suffering giant. He swam to the side of the great turtle, his small form barely reaching the creature's immense, stony knee. Koa watched him with his weary, amber eyes, remaining perfectly still, seeming to understand that this small boy was not a threat, but a friend. "I'm going to get this off you," Finn said, his voice soft and reassuring. "It might take a long time, but I will get it all off. I promise." The great turtle let out a long, slow, shaky breath, a sound that was half a sigh and half a groan. But in that sound, Finn could feel a tiny, new flicker of hope. For the first time in a very long time, someone had come not to hurt or to take, but to help. And in the middle of all his pain and sadness, that tiny spark of kindness felt like the most powerful magic in the world. Finn began the slow and difficult work of healing. He started with the smallest and easiest part, a thick, rotting rope that was wrapped around one of Koa's great, clawed feet. His small fingers were not strong enough to break the rope, so he used a sharp, flat stone from the shore, sawing at the tough fibers again and again. It was slow, painstaking work. His arms ached, and the cold of the water seeped deep into his bones. But he did not stop. He worked for hours, sawing and pulling, until finally, with a soft, snapping sound, the last fiber gave way and the rope came free. He pulled the heavy, slimy rope away from the turtle's leg and dragged it to the shore. It was just one small piece of the great, tangled mess, but it was a start. He looked at Koa's leg, and he could see that the skin underneath the rope was pale and sore. He gently rubbed the area with his hands, trying to bring some life back to the poor, wounded limb. The great turtle let out another, softer sigh, this one of relief. And he shifted his weight just a little, a silent encouragement for the boy to continue his kind and patient work. After freeing the first leg, Finn felt a new surge of energy. He had proven it was possible. He moved to the next tangle, a mess of old, torn fishing net caught around Koa's other front flipper. This was a different kind of challenge, a puzzle of 100 stubborn knots. He worked with his fingers, picking and pulling at the knots, his hands growing raw and sore. As he worked, he noticed a small, almost imperceptible change. The water flowing out of the pool, the water that was becoming the river, seemed to be moving just a tiny bit faster. A little of the heavy, sluggish quality was gone, and then he saw it, a single, tiny, silver minnow, the first fish he had seen since leaving his home, swam bravely into the pool from the spring's source. It swam a quick, hopeful circle before disappearing again. It was a sign that the life of the river was not completely gone. It was waiting, just waiting, for its heart to be free. The sight of that one tiny fish filled Finn with more hope than 100 sunrises. He was not just untangling knots, he was untangling the very life force of the water. He turned back to the net with a renewed and fierce determination. Finn worked for the rest of the day and into the night, stopping only to rest for a few moments and to eat a small piece of his bread. He untangled the nets, sawed through the old ropes, and dragged every piece of the heavy, polluting junk from the water and onto the shore. It was the hardest work he had ever done in his life. As he worked, a deep and silent bond of trust formed between the boy and the giant. Koa remained perfectly still, his great patience a powerful, silent support. He seemed to understand that the boy was his only hope. As night fell and the air grew cold, Finn began to shiver violently in the water. Seeing this, Koa did something amazing. He slowly, gently exhaled a long, slow breath onto the surface of the water. The air that came from him was not cold, but was filled with the deep, ancient warmth of the earth itself. It created a small patch of warm, steamy air around Finn, a gentle, personal cocoon that chased away the worst of the cold and allowed him to keep working. It was a gesture of profound care, a silent promise that they were in this together. By the next morning, almost all of the debris was gone. Koa could now move his legs and neck freely. The only thing that remained was the largest and most difficult piece, a big, jagged, and incredibly heavy piece of rusty metal that was wedged between a rock on the pool floor and the turtle's great shell, right next to the dim green Heart-Stone. This was the piece that was doing the most harm, pressing cruelly against the turtle's very life force. Finn pushed and pulled at it with all his might, but it was too heavy and too deeply wedged. He could not move it. He felt a wave of despair. To have come so far, only to be defeated at the very end. But then he remembered his rope. He swam to the shore and tied one end of his strong hemp rope around the sharpest edge of the metal. He then swam to the other side of the pool and looped the rope around the base of a great, strong willow tree. Using the tree as an anchor, he began to pull. He pulled with every ounce of strength in his small body, his feet slipping in the mud, his muscles straining. He pulled and he pulled, the rope groaning with the strain. The great, rusty piece of metal did not move. It was too heavy. Seeing his struggle, Koa, the river guardian, understood. He gathered the last of his own strength. As Finn pulled with all his might, Koa gave a great, powerful push with his newly freed legs. The combined effort of the boy, the turtle, and the strong willow tree was just enough. With a loud, groaning shriek of metal against rock, the heavy piece of junk finally broke free. It tumbled away and sank to the bottom of the pool, its power to harm now gone. The moment the weight and the poison were lifted from his shell, Koa let out a great, shuddering breath of pure relief. And the Heart-Stone, now free, responded. The dull, grimy film that had covered it seemed to dissolve, and a brilliant, powerful, and magnificent wave of pure, jade-green light pulsed out from it. The weak, faint flicker was gone, replaced by a strong, steady, and incredibly vibrant glow. The heart of the river was awake, and it was beating with a powerful, healthy, and joyful light. The brilliant, green light of the Heart-Stone did not stay in the pool. It flowed out with the water, a great, cleansing wave of pure, life-giving energy. It poured down the mountainside, and wherever it touched, the sickness vanished. The murky, brown water was instantly transformed into a sparkling, clear, and vibrant turquoise. The oily film dissolved. The foul smell was replaced by the sweet scent of clean water and fresh earth, and the sad gray silt was washed away. The wave of life flowed over the dead, drooping plants on the riverbank, and they instantly straightened up, their leaves turning a healthy, vibrant green, and their flowers bursting open in a riot of joyful color. The river spirit, once a sad gray wisp, was now a brilliant, laughing, dancing ribbon of pure turquoise light, more vibrant and more full of life than ever before. The river was no longer sick and sad, it was reborn. It was clean, it was happy, and its cheerful, giggling, babbling song was 1,000 times more beautiful and more joyful than it had ever been. Back at the sacred pool, Finn watched the world come back to life, his heart so full of happiness it felt like it might float away. The water of the pool was now as clear as crystal, and the willow trees around it were covered in new green leaves. Koa, the great river guardian, now free and clean, swam a slow, graceful, and happy circle in his renewed home. The Heart-Stone on his back pulsed with a calm, steady, and powerful green light. He swam over to Finn, who was now resting on the shore, and lowered his great, ancient head. "You have saved me, little one," his voice rumbled in Finn's mind, a voice now full of a deep, warm, and endless gratitude. "You have a heart as strong and as pure as the river itself. I must give you a gift." He dipped his head into a secret, hidden spot beneath the spring's source, and brought up a single, small object. It was a beautiful, smooth river crystal, but inside it, a tiny, perfect, and magical water plant was growing, its leaves unfurling in slow motion. "This is a seed of life," Koa explained, "planted in your garden. It will always give you the purest water, and it will be a reminder of our friendship, the friendship between the river and its kindest guardian." With the precious seed of life held carefully in his hands, Finn said his goodbyes to his great, new friend. He promised he would visit whenever he could, and that he would always watch over their river. The journey home was a joyful one. He walked alongside the happy, singing river, his feet light and his heart full. The world was alive with music once more. The otters were back on their slide, the kingfishers were back in their nests, and the air was full of the sweet smell of clean water and blooming flowers. When he returned to his village, his parents were overjoyed to see him, and the whole village was celebrating the river's miraculous recovery. Finn did not speak of the giant turtle or the journey he had taken. It was a secret he would keep in his heart. That evening, he sat by his favorite spot on the riverbank. The water was clear and sparkling, and the beautiful turquoise ribbon of the river spirit danced and leaped in the current. And as Finn listened, the river whispered its greatest story yet, a story of a kind, brave boy who had saved a giant and brought the music back to the world. And so, Finn became the secret guardian of the river, a true friend to its ancient, gentle heart. Now it is your turn to find your own peaceful river. Close your eyes, listen to the gentle flow of your own quiet dreams, and sleep well. If you enjoyed our fable tonight, we hope you'll join us again. Please like and subscribe to Bedtimes Fable to help us share more gentle stories with the world. Sweet dreams.